The first time that I ever saw him, he was kneeling next to a grave. The service had ended moments before, and the preacher had just uttered those final words of comfort to the family. "He's gone to a better place." But even now, the only sound was the wind snatching those words away and carrying them out over the desolate moor. He was dressed in black from top to bottom, hat to boots, and his face was hidden behind the wide brim of his black Stetson. All I could see were the strong, rough hands that clutched the edge of the grave, knuckles white against the dark soil. I stood there watching him for a moment, wondering who he was, why he had come to this God-forsaken place. He didn't look like the kind of man who should be here. Not with skin like polished mahogany and eyes like polished jet. My curiosity got the better of me, and I stepped forward to introduce myself. "Mister," I said tentatively, "if you don't mind my asking, but what brings you to this neck of the woods?" He straightened up at my voice and brushed himself off, as if annoyed by my intrusion. "None of your business," he snapped. Then he tipped back his hat, revealing a handsome face, sharp-featured and sullen. His lips were thin and cruel, his nostrils flared, and a thick dark beard covered most of his jaw. His eyes glinted like chips of obsidian, hard and cold and unreadable. I was taken aback by his appearance, more so by the wild glint in his eyes. "I'm sorry," I stammered, "I didn't mean to intrude. I just thought perhaps you knew something about the goings-on around here, that maybe you could help us with our investigation." "Investigation?" he sneered. "What are you investigating?" "It doesn't concern you," I said stiffly, trying to regain my composure. This man, whatever he was doing here, clearly didn't want to talk. And since I had no way of knowing whether or not he was dangerous, I decided to beat a hasty retreat. As I turned to go, I heard him ask, "Who are you, anyway?" I paused and gave him a cool smile over my shoulder. "Just an old friend of the family, mister, just an old friend of the family." I wasn't lying. I had known the dead man well, or so I thought. We had been friends at school, and, unlike him, I had stayed in the village after we left. It had been my home all my life, and it would be my home until the day I die. As I walked away, I couldn't help casting furtive glances over my shoulder, half expecting to see that man coming after me. But he didn't move. He just stood there by the grave, motionless and silent, like some dark monolith that had sprung up out of the earth to mark the dead man's resting place. For the rest of the day, I couldn't shake off the feeling that I was being watched. Every time I looked up, it was as if someone had been staring at me from the shadows. I told myself it was silly, that I was letting my imagination run wild. After all, who could possibly be stalking me? There weren't many people in the village, and those few were all accounted for. Still, I couldn't help but feel uneasy, as though something sinister was lurking just beyond my sight, waiting to pounce. That night, I awoke to the feeling of icy fingers crawling across my skin. I sat up in bed, heart pounding, and scanned the room in the faint moonlight, seeing nothing out of the ordinary. Perhaps it had been a dream, I told myself, trying to calm my racing pulse. But then I felt it again, that same sensation of being touched, of being watched. I turned toward the window and gasped. Standing outside, silhouetted against the pale moonlight, was a tall, dark figure with long, spidery limbs. One finger was raised in a menacing gesture, as if beckoning me to follow him. I stared back, paralyzed with fear, unable to scream or move or break the spell that held me. Then, just as suddenly as he had appeared, the figure vanished. I threw back the covers and rushed to the window. Outside, the street was empty and silent. Had I really seen what I thought I had seen? Was someone playing a cruel joke on me? Over the next few days, the unsettling feeling of being watched intensified. I started jumping at shadows, and found myself constantly looking over my shoulder. Even the friendly faces of the villagers seemed to hold a hint of menace. They would smile and nod, but their eyes were cold and distant, as if they had something to hide. One evening, I was sitting in my parlour, the windows closed tight against the damp sea air, when I heard a scratching sound at the glass. I went to the window and peered out into the darkening street. There was nothing there, only the gnarled branches of the ancient oak tree scraping against the roof tiles. I sighed and turned away, dismissing it as my overactive imagination playing tricks on me. And then I heard it again, a soft, persistent scratching, like claws on wood. I turned back to the window, my heart pounding. This time, pressed against the glass, I saw a face. It was the man from the graveyard, his eyes gleaming with a terrifying light. I screamed and stumbled back, knocking over a chair in my haste to get away. When I finally regained my composure, I rushed to the window and tore open the shutters. The street was empty once more, and as I scanned the faces of the villagers, I realized that none of them had even looked up. They had all known that I was being stalked, that I was being hunted, and none of them had cared enough to warn me. Desperation clawed at me, fueled by the terror that tightened its icy fingers around my throat. What did this man want? Why was he tormenting me? The questions echoed unanswered in my mind, bouncing off the walls of my sanity, driving me deeper into the abyss of fear. I had to get out of town. I packed a small bag with essentials, ignoring the accusatory stares of the villagers who gossiped openly about my strange behavior. I hadn't slept properly in days, my mind a tormented landscape of fear and paranoia. As I made my way through the labyrinthine streets, I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see the man emerge from the shadows and block my path. But he didn't appear, and as I reached the edge of town, I dared to hope that I had escaped his clutches. Then I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Going somewhere, old friend?" I froze, my heart hammering against my ribs. Slowly, I turned around and came face to face with the man from the graveyard. His eyes glittered with triumph. "You can't hide from me forever," he said, his voice a low growl. "We have much to discuss, you and I." I tried to scream, but no sound came out. My throat was parched, my tongue swollen in my mouth. I wanted to run, to tear down the road and put as much distance between myself and this nightmare as possible. But my legs felt heavy, anchored to the spot by some unseen force. "Come," the man said, extending a hand toward me. "Come with me, and I will show you the truth." His grip was like iron, his touch searing my skin. As I looked into his eyes, I saw not only triumph, but something else. Something ancient and terrible, a darkness that seemed to suck the very light from my soul. And then I understood. This was no ordinary man. He was something evil, something that had been slumbering in the darkness, waiting for the chance to rise and claim me as its own. I struggled against his grip, but it was useless. His strength was unnatural, his hold on me unbreakable. As he dragged me away, I caught one last glimpse of the village, the homes of the people who had known my tormentor's presence and done nothing to protect me. I wanted to scream at them, to tell them to stop him, to save me, but no sound escaped my lips. The world spun around me, the trees blurring into a green and brown haze. Finally, the man stopped and turned to face me. A twisted smile spread across his face, revealing teeth that were sharp and cruel, like the fangs of a venomous snake. "Welcome to my world," he hissed. "Here we are alone, and you are mine." And in that moment, I knew that I had stumbled into a realm where there was no escape, where I would be forever trapped in the clutches of a monster who had no name, no mercy, and no end.